So just because something is not true now doesn't mean that it won't be true at some point in your life. However, most aspirational clutter is making us feel bad about ourselves now.
Mhm.
So if I have the craft room and I have to close the door because it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much in there. I never have time to do it. It's such a mess. You feel bad because you don't have the time in this season to do these things. If you're holding on to clothes that don't fit you anymore with, oh, I might wear those someday, they're, someone that I interviewed said that they're mocking you. They're mocking you from your closet, like why you can't fit into this anymore. What's wrong with you? Why can't you weigh what you wore pre-baby? All of this. And we have enough in our own heads making us feel bad about ourselves with comparison and all of these other things in our minds. We don't need stuff to also be making us feel bad about ourselves.
We grew up with the phrase, home is where the heart is, but our culture has shifted and now the message is, home should be Pinterest perfect. I'm calling BS on that message. Home, it's not about the stuff, it's about the story. And whether you know it or not, your home is a reflection of you and is already saying something. So what is it that you want it to say? Hey, I'm Danny, a former first grade teacher turned home decorator. Going from a dual income to a single income so I could stay home with my babies meant budget, like ramen eating, Goodwill shopping budget. And I learned a few things along the way, like how to bring big style to your home without breaking the bank. And I'm sharing it all with you. Tips, tricks, decor, and design advice so you can learn to tell your story with your style. Where you can start living free from the Pinterest perfect trap and start living a life of intention. Welcome to Fig and Farm at Home, where we design happy living and where it doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. Today I'm chatting with Emily McDermott, the host of the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. She's on a mission to help moms just like you and me reduce the number one thing that is causing them the most overwhelm, and that is clutter. She even mentioned she did not go to school to be a stuff manager, and neither did any of us. Today in our conversation, we chat all about why it is so hard to get rid of clutter and simple ways that we can tackle it head on so that we can overcome our own overwhelm. And if you want more, Emily and I continued the conversation after I hit pause on the recording, and we took it a little bit deeper. In fact, a lot of it deeper. And she taught us the 5 C's of decluttering. That you can find inside of the collective. It is my absolute honor to bring special guests like Emily into the collective so that they can bring their expertise and their training to my students inside of the monthly membership. If you want more, I encourage you to come on over and check it out. You can do that by going to figandfarmathome.com/the collective. Enjoy today's conversation. Hi, Emily. Welcome back to the show. I am so thrilled to have you here. Uh, I've already introduced you to my listeners, but I want you to tell us in your own words who you are, what it is you do, and then we're going to dive into how you can help all of our listeners today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me back. It's been a minute, so I'm happy to be here. And I am a wife, an Air Force wife, technically, except we're permanently stationed in Northern Virginia, which makes it a little unusual. I am a mom to 2 crazy boys that are 7 and almost 9. So hashtag boy mom. I know Danny and I have that in common. And I also podcast. So my podcast name is Moms Overcoming Overwhelm. And I help overwhelmed busy mamas declutter their homes, heads, and hearts. And I help them also with in-person decluttering and organizing, virtual if they need it, and have a really robust online community where I help mamas too. So that's a little about me.
Awesome. I love that so much. And yeah, you're right. I have 3 rambunctious boys. So we are hashtag boy mom. You're right. Oh, awesome. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the decluttering journey? Because I don't think I know that story.
Yeah, it's a very not direct. I always joke that I never went to school for stuff management. Like I went for international relations, and yet I'm doing this. And it was actually our journey with infertility that caused me to simplify my life in the first place. So we had unexplained infertility, which means there's nothing physically wrong. We just weren't able to conceive. And at the time, I was working full time, chronic people pleaser, perfectionist, all the P's that are not so great. And I realized that not only with the physical stuff that was overwhelming me in my home, and this was pre-kids, mind you, but also that I really had a lot of complexity to my schedule and what I was taking on. And that's when I learned about minimalism and simplicity and decluttering. Started with the physical side first, as most people do, and then moved to more that schedule, clutter. And we were lucky enough to conceive our oldest, Andrew, via IVF. And I think part of the reason was I was able to make that physical and emotional space. And then our second was a surprise. So then it was doubling down on the simplifying because I ended up having two under two, which I didn't expect. And it was a wonderful season and also one of the hardest seasons. So I was just more simplifying our routines and the rhythms of our day. And I always say simplicity is my sanity. And it's
Yeah.
helped me through every season of my motherhood and life and continues to do so. And I've been on this path now for almost 10 years.
Oh, fantastic. And so your boys know no different at all.
Correct.
That is what they did. How was the transition to simplicity for your husband?
It actually went pretty well. And I think when I am coaching women and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't get my family on board, I can't get my husband on board, everyone has sort of this different tolerance for clutter. And mine is a lot lower than my husband's. And I have to kind of recognize that, but then also sort of offer. So, for example, hey, honey, I'm going to the donation center this Friday. Do you have anything for me? And it's more keeping that open conversation. And at the beginning, it might be, no, I don't have anything. No. And now it's like he'll give me stuff. He's like, oh, this is ready to donate. I still have to ignore his pile of half dirty, half clean clothes in the in the bedroom, which drives me insane. But again, I recognize that he has a different personality. He likes things more out. I like things put away. So it's recognizing those differences in that clutter tolerance and then just keeping the door open for communication. Also recognizing that, which we'll talk about in a minute, that decluttering is important because it affects our health.
Yeah.
It's extra stuff's not neutral, so it impacts our physical and emotional health, our stress, our energy. And if you're really impacted by clutter like I am, very sensitive to that in my environment, I just say to him, hey, there's science that backs this up. I'm not crazy. This stuff is stressing me out. Is there any way that we could put some systems in place to make it a little easier? And of course, my husband loves me, so he's like, of course, we can figure something out. But a lot of times people might not know the science behind it. And that can really appeal to some spouses that are very much like facts and figures people, like my husband is. So that helped too.
Yeah, my husband too. He's a science guy. And so
Mhm.
if I give him some facts so that he doesn't have to do the research himself, he will very much appreciate it. But
Yeah.
I agree with you, Emily, that sometimes it is the example that you give. It's not a, hey, I'm going to go through your stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, they own it. They might have attachment to it. And so being that model of doing it first and then having that bag aside very conveniently so that he knows he can contribute to it when he wants to is really helpful. Okay, tell us a little bit more about the sciencey stuff. I don't want to
Yeah.
land here too long because I do have other questions for you, but I think it's really important. And I think for me too, there's a very visceral reaction to clutter, and
Mhm.
I can't do it very well.
Yeah.
It is like one of those things that like clutter begets clutter, and then of course the stress for
Mhm.
me. So can you tell us a little bit about the science behind it before we dive into
Yeah.
what on earth we do about it?
Well, part of it is the visual component. So your brain sees clutter as undone tasks and things that you have to do. So I'm recording this in our bedroom office area. And if your bedroom is where you're supposed to be relaxing and recharging, if it is cluttered, then when you go to sleep, your brain is thinking about the undone things, the laundry, the papers, and same with the kitchen. Like I always joke that my husband goes into the kitchen and he goes to the fridge and he gets his food. I go in and I see the dishes in the sink and the permission slip that needs to be signed and the art project that was never put away. So when we recognize that our brain cannot really handle that visual stimulus overwhelm, then it's like, okay, well, that's part of the reason why this is important. And the other thing is that it actually raises cortisol levels. So there have been some studies done where women that were giving tours of their home that were describing their home as being cluttered or disorganized, their cortisol levels were higher in their saliva as than women that did not feel like they had cluttered homes. And the husbands did not have the same rise in cortisol levels, I always like to point out.
Okay, and I know we're both about at the same stage of life, and I know how
Yeah.
cortisol affects our body.
Mhm.
For any of those listeners who aren't aware of that, what happens when we have raised cortisol?
Yeah, well, it impacts pretty much everything, but I mean, our sleep, it impacts probably our eating habits, and that's another thing. Women in cluttered kitchens were more likely to eat cookies rather than more healthy things. So it impacts what we eat, it impacts our mind, and just like that running to-do list, it impacts our ability to relax and to be able to rest and to sleep. So pretty much everything. And so we don't want to mess with like raised cortisol. We want to do everything in our power to lower it because with hormonal changes, it's even harder to kind of keep that under control.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like it is literally a constant state of stress when you have
Mhm.
your cortisol high. And I know for me, every time I go to the chiropractor or every time he will adjust me and are you stressed? Yes, actually I am. And I know that some of it is my own doing and some of it is the too full of schedule, life, stuff, you name it. And I love that you can have a proactive approach to this. And this is really clutter doesn't control you, right?
Right.
You are the one who can make those decisions. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. But um, and I'm going to just skip past my first question, which was why is decluttering important? Because you've already mentioned it, but is there anything else you might add to that we didn't already talk about?
Yeah, I geek out on all things decluttering, and one of those things is Swedish death cleaning. So that is, making sure your stuff is in order so that your family members don't have to deal with it if something were to happen. And we're in a similar stage, like you said, I'm in my mid 40s, and so I need to think about the impact of all my stuff if I were to pass and my kids and my husband having to go through it, not knowing what I would have wanted done with it, grieving. And nobody wants to put their loved ones in that position. And yet we hold on to stuff for a variety of reasons. And so I feel like instead of waiting until we're grandparents or something, if we're able to do that now proactively, then we're alleviating that burden on our family. So that might be a different kind of motivation. If the health side of it and the science side doesn't really motivate you, maybe more that doing that for your loved ones.
Yeah. And I'm just going to throw in my personal experience with that because my mom passed away 7 years ago and she was she had a craft room that was a little bit out of control and lots of things, right? I mean, if you needed it, she had it. From sewing materials to fabric to extra fabric to whatever. And she did help me years ago with a baby business. I don't know if you knew I had a baby boutique before doing home decorating. And it was big because that was my stage of life. And so she would help sew things and had the fabric. Anyway, too much stuff. But when she passed away, my dad was ready to be done with all of that. And there was nothing prepared ahead of time because it was unexpected. And it fell on me, quite honestly. It fell on me. And because I didn't want to just willy-nilly throw things out without making a decision about it, Emily, do you know what I did?
Mm.
I brought it all home to my house. Brought it all home. It lived in the garage. And then when I was emotionally able to go through it, I did. And it was actually very beautiful because I donated several pieces to our middle school, the home ec program, and got rid of some choices. But that was hard. And I definitely didn't want to do it in the middle of having just lost my mom. It took
Right.
about 8, 9 months for me to go through it. And so that I would wholeheartedly agree that that is a motivator to eliminate some of the things to make life easier for the people left behind.
Mhm.
All right. And I know, I do teach a little bit about decluttering in my community, and I talk about how there's different types of clutter. And I'm curious from your perspective, is emotional clutter the hardest to get rid of? Or is
Mm.
or can it be what do you find when you're working with your clients? What is the hardest type of clutter to get rid of?
I would say for women, it's actually aspirational clutter. And
Oh,
aspirational clutter represents what you were and what you did in a previous season of life.
uh-huh.
So it could be the scrapbook stuff that you can't get to anymore. It could be the clothes that fit you 2 kids and 15 pounds ago. It could be the books that you used to have time to read, but now you just collapse in bed and scroll Instagram. No judgment.
Yeah.
So I find that that's the hardest because you're having to accept that you're letting go of a season of your life and who you thought you still were, but you're maybe not that person anymore, and that's okay, but it's hard to accept that that's okay. So I would say more than sentimental clutter, which is another, of course, big one. But the aspirational clutter, I feel like with the moms I work with, that's probably the hardest.
Okay, interesting. So, what would you suggest to them if that is the hardest thing? How do you coach them to get past that?
Yeah, part of it is the seasonality, like recognizing the seasonality of life. So just because something is not true now doesn't mean that it won't be true at some point in your life. However, most aspirational clutter is making us feel bad about ourselves now.
Mhm.
So if I have the craft room and I have to close the door because it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much in there. I never have time to do it. It's such a mess. You feel bad because you don't have the time in the season to do these things. If you're holding on to clothes that don't fit you anymore with, oh, I might wear those someday, they're, someone that I interviewed said that they're mocking you. They're mocking you from your closet, like why you can't fit into this anymore. What's wrong with you? Why can't you weigh what you wore pre-baby? All of this. And we have enough in our own heads making us feel bad about ourselves with comparison and all of these other things in our minds. We don't need stuff to also be making us feel bad about ourselves.
Yeah.
So if you think about it that way and recognize just because I don't scrapbook now doesn't mean I can't scrapbook in 5 years. So let the stuff go to somebody that could use it now, and you can still scrapbook then. It's
Yeah.
okay. But
Yeah.
then you won't have the stuff kind of like mocking you, so to speak,
Yeah. Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, I have three things to say about that.
Yeah.
One is scrapbooking still a thing?
It is with people that I know. And so, I mean, I don't do it, but maybe it was crocheting or maybe
Yeah.
it's, I try to think of like what hobbies that are crafty people do because
Yeah.
I'm so not crafty. So,
Oh, I used to scrapbook a lot, and
yeah.
I can understand you. The other thing I want to say before I ask you a question is, if you have those pants that you used to fit, and oh my gosh, it's the aspirational, I want to fit into it someday, they were my favorite. Not only are they mocking you, but that's adding to your cortisol level, right? Because
Yeah.
it's kind of stressing you out. Then you start feeling guilty about not going to the gym or not dedicating that time to get that walk in with the weighted vest or whatever is popular these days. And
Mhm.
that just is one more contributing factor to the stress that is being built and keeping you
Yeah.
reaching those goals are unhealthy in the first place.
Yeah, the same person I interviewed, and she does, style and wardrobe stuff, and she said, your closet shouldn't be a museum for what fit you 5 years ago or a warehouse for what you might wear 5 years from now. Like it should be the boutique that you shop from every day. Whereas most women that I know, you go in there and it's not representative of what you are wearing. That Pareto principle of wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time, but we are still keeping all the other stuff in there. So if it was just representative of like what I use and wear every day, we would feel so much better getting dressed in the morning.
Yeah, and easy decision making, right? Like you're
Yeah.
not standing there saying again, I don't have anything to wear.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I know that there are plenty of people who are going to hear this who ask this one question. Okay. I bought the scrapbook stuff or crochet or whatever the craft is. I bought it and wouldn't getting rid of it now, thinking that maybe someday I'll get back to it. Isn't that going to be a waste of money? I know my response to that. I'm
Yeah.
very curious what yours is going to be.
Yeah. So I like to say that you paid the money once. You don't have to keep paying with your time and your energy and everything else. You can not have this either or mentality all the time. Like, okay, I spend so much money, therefore, and because I'm not a wasteful person, I must keep it. You can say, I spent so much money and I don't need this now, so I can let it go and I'm not wasteful. Like you can have this both in mentality. But I think this idea, like that, the sunk cost fallacy, which is pretty much like you pay money for something, and because of that, you're less likely, to less likely to let it go. Just recognizing like stuff is not neutral. So you may have paid the money, but there's still those additional costs that we were talking about, like to our health and everything, and to just like having that mental inventory all the time of like what we own and where it is. And it's not worth it for things that you're not using and that is in your current season of life right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, one thing that you mentioned earlier is, you're not a stuff manager, and that's what
Mhm.
happens, right? Like you still have to manage that stuff, whether or not you're using it.
Yeah.
And, or a stuff shuffler, I've heard it called, right? Like, I don't know. We did not sign up in this life to be stuff managers and stuff shuffler. We already, as busy moms, manage our kiddos' schedules and all the things that are happening with them. Um, yeah, one of the things I tell my clients too is that, you're not wasting money in giving it away. You're actually doing something really wonderful, allowing someone else to bless to use that you aren't currently using. But if there was any waste in the money, it was at the time of purchase,
Yeah.
right? You're not
Right.
wasting it, you get rid of it. Yeah. All right. Can you give us any tips, any quick tips that would help us successfully get started if we have roadblocks in our way? Do you have
Yeah.
any
Oh.
words of wisdom we would love to hear?
I always recommend the most unsentimental, unemotional areas. So I'm actually at the time of recording doing a 5-day decluttering challenge in my group right now. So I'll give you a little preview. So we're doing our vehicle today. If you don't have a vehicle, you do your purse or your diaper bag. Then we're doing a bathroom on Tuesday. Let's see if I can remember this. We're doing, I think, linen closet. And then perhaps our fridge. I always say like expired or gross food counts as decluttering if you get rid of it. So the point is that we want the highest trash to sentimental item ratio. We want like easy, low-hanging fruit, the easy decisions. And most moms I know do not have time to take the entire contents of an area or their closet and throw it on the bed and go through it for 3 hours because you're going to be interrupted likely in the first 15 minutes, if not before. So don't do that to yourself. Pick a subcategory. So if you're doing the fridge and you're like, I can't do this whole fridge, do the condiments or pick like one category or subcategory and then be able to just do that. But that low hanging fruit is the way that we build the momentum and we recognize, like, oh, this actually feels good. It's maybe not as hard as I thought. And then that's where I recommend, and you can kind of build that consistency from there.
Yeah, and that decluttering muscle, right? Like it
Yes.
takes a little bit of repetition, just like you would working out in the gym, takes a little bit of repetition to get used to it and
Mhm.
build that endurance. And awesome, I love that. Um, what else? Okay, let's say we've gotten rid of the lowest hanging fruit. What do we do next?
Yeah, I probably would move to, I'm trying to think of some areas that are harder for folks. Probably your closet or things within your bedroom when you're starting to get into some of that aspirational clutter. And sometimes aspirational clutter can be for our kids too,
Yeah.
because it's the things that we wish that they would wear or the toys we wish that they would play with, the educational toys that they don't touch. And for those types of examples, you just want to be able to observe and have sort of a baseline. So for your closet, you may have heard of like the reverse hanger trick where you put all your hangers backwards and then as you wear things, you put them forwards. So that is like this visual, oh, okay, I can see what I'm wearing, what I'm gravitating towards, what I'm not wearing. So perhaps I can put these things I don't wear as often aside in an out of sight, out of mind bin for 30 days or so and decide whether I still need them. For kids, you're observing what books are they reading? What toys are they playing with? What clothes are they wearing and not wearing? And then do the same thing. Maybe we can, for a time, for a season, put these things aside, see if they notice. If they notice, we have it right there. We can bring it back. It's okay. But then most likely they don't notice. And then you're able to kind of let those things go. So I think those would be some of the other areas that I would focus on next.
Okay, I love that. And going back to the reversal hanger idea, that really directly ties into the Pareto's principle that you were talking about. I mean,
Yes.
you can then very much visibly see what is the 20% of what you wear 80% of the time. Oh, I love that. Okay, that is something I did not do, but I think I'm going to try that. So
Yeah,
check in with me
I
in
will.
weeks to see how it's going.
I will. And, I do laundry every day just by choice because I don't want to think about it. And so sometimes knowing, and when people are like, how much clothing should I keep? I ask, how often do you do laundry or how often do you want to do laundry? Because even if we have like two outfits a day and you do it once a week, you only need 14 to 15 shirts. And most people have like for the season you're in, most people have far more than that. So then it's like sometimes I make recommendations based upon laundry. And then, of course, you're seeing how much you actually wear based upon doing that reverse hanger trick.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. That's really interesting. Emily, I might challenge you on this one because I have three active boys. Greg and I, so they are playing soccer 5 days a week. Um, Greg and I work out daily. So I'm doing 3 loads of laundry a day. 3 loads.
I'm not
Not by
surprised,
choice.
but the sports do impact it greatly. So it may be you're doing laundry daily, but it may be more than one load
Yeah.
in your case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that though because having the idea of, you're laundering the things that you're wearing, right? And so that's really going to eliminate the idea and again give you a visual too of what is worn and what is not worn, similar to the hanging.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Any other tips to get these mamas started and working successfully on decluttering?
Yeah, I think just recognizing not having this like perfectionist either or kind of mentality about it, just knowing, hey, this impacts me, it impacts my health, and today I'm going to do, 10 minutes cleaning out my car. Like we don't have to have it be this whole big thing where we have all of these different bins and all of this stuff, and then we end up talking ourselves out of it because it seems like it's too difficult. And then again, starting with that easy stuff really helps a lot. Like, because clutter is unmade decisions and decluttering is decision making at its core. So you do have to work that muscle at the beginning. It's going to be hard, it's going to be kind of awkward. But then when you start seeing the benefits,
Yeah.
then you'll want to do it more. So just keep at it. And Danny and I are cheering you on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And doing it right alongside you, right? I mean, how often you're at the like probably the maintaining. This is just in my constant rhythm. And I have a rhythm probably not as well muscled as yours, but it's still there. My question for you is okay, and then we'll move on. But what happens when we run up against something that keeps us stuck? Like we've done the low-hanging fruit, we've done the closet, we've done the like, is there any kind of mental shift that you can help us get over when we've done the easier things and now we just have like, I know it's good for me. I just need to get over that shift.
Yeah. It depends a little bit on your personality and how you deal with accountability. So you may be familiar with like Gretchen Rubin's The Four Tendencies. So you have the upholder and the obliger. Haha, me.
Yeah.
And then you have the rebel, and then I can't remember the fourth one, of course. But regardless, like for me as an obliger, I don't really uphold things internally for myself, but I need external accountability. So for me, being in some sort of community where we're doing challenges like the one that I have, or just having someone to be like, hey, I feel like I want to get rid of this, but I don't know. Like, what do you think? And I know some ADHD mamas that they actually do body doubling where they're like on Zoom at the same time and they're doing laundry at the same time or they're going through the junk drawer at the same time. And just knowing someone's there in real time for that like 15 minutes, then it makes you more likely to go through with it because you're kind of having a buddy do it with you. So you have to kind of know a little bit about your personality and what motivates you to actually continue with something.
Perfect. One of the things that motivates me is to turn it into a game or a challenge. I'm competitive by nature. And so my thought is, I usually like to reward myself when I do hard things. So, and it's never anything physical because I don't want to bring more stuff in, but it might be something, well, it might be physical in that, like a pedicure that I don't get very often, or a run through the coffee line, or, something like that physical, but never anything to replace in my home because that is not the goal. Oh,
Mhm.
Emily, I love that so much. Can you really quickly tell us how people can come and join your group? Because
Yeah.
that sounds amazing, and I would love for them to be a part of it so that they can be a part of the next challenge you do.
Yeah, and we do the challenges like every other week. So the URL, which Danny can share in the show notes, is tinyurl.com/ moms overcoming overwhelm. And
Awesome.
that'll bring you to the group. And I think we have like 800 some moms there, and it's really quite active given how they're overwhelmed and busy. So it's been great just seeing again those wins where people are like, hey, I cleaned out my car today and it wasn't that hard. And you're like, yay. And everyone's cheering everyone on. So it's a great place to be.
Yeah, I imagine having that accountability and those people who are right there beside you, overwhelmed, they probably really love that community. Ah,
Yeah.
wonderful. Awesome. Well, for those of us who are going to be staying on, we are going to hand the mic directly over to you because you have a very special presentation for all of us. And you're going to teach us a little bit more in depth about the 5 C's of decluttering. And I'm so incredibly thrilled that you're doing that for us. So I am going to mute myself. I'm going to let you share your screen and take it away.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, friend, we are stopping there for today. But if you want to hear the rest of the conversation, it is inside of the collective, where Emily shares why clutter really matters, why it matters so much that it can be, without sounding dramatic, robbing you of the things that matter the most, and what to do about it in more specifics than what she already shared. So, friend, come on over, join the conversation, and take action. You can do that by going to figandfarmathome.com/the collective. It is, again, my absolute honor to bring the members special presentations like this that accompany the things that I'm already teaching inside of the collective weekly. But when I have an extra Tuesday in every month, because I do teach 4 Tuesdays in the month, when I have that extra Tuesday, that 5th Tuesday, I do something special like this. I bring in special guests who are sharing their knowledge, their wisdom, and their expertise with all of you, and it is an absolute joy to connect you together. All right, friend, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And ready, set, let's go declutter. All right, until next time, I'll see you soon. Hey, real quick before you go, if you learned something new or found value in today's podcast, would you head over to iTunes to Fig and Farm at Home and leave a review and subscribe to the show? That would be awesome. And if you'd like to connect with my community of mamas who are learning to be intentional storytellers within their own homes, join us at bit.ly/design101 group. There's always more room at the table. See you soon.